So that is the angle that I was holding it from the linear belt, and that is the angle that we are going to be holding it on the stone. It's exactly the same. Okay, we're not going to use this while we're sharpening, but we can use it as a guide to give us a reference to how far the spine of the knife should be off of the stone while we're sharpening. Yeah. Yeah. So we slide it down like this into the center, and then I'm looking at this, and I can say, okay, to me that's maybe 18 millimeters, 20 millimeters, something like that. So for this knife, it will be 18 or 20 millimeters. Obviously, the deeper the blade or the shallower the blade, this distance will be different. So it's unique to each knife. So just make a reference for your knives, how much you think it is, 20 mil, something like that. Just memorize that. Yeah. Okay, so we are basically just using all the tension in this hand to hold the angle of the knife, nice and consistent. And to be honest, the whole art of sharpening a knife very quickly, very well, and getting a good finish is consistency of holding this angle the whole time. If you can be very consistent in holding this angle and not slowly over time be changing it, you will sharpen your knife very quickly and very effectively. And the reason is because essentially what we're doing is we're pulling the flat bevel across the stone, aren't we? If you imagine it, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to pull it across the stone. But if you hold it too steep, even just for one stroke, you change that very quickly, you'll round that off and it will be a completely different angle. So it will be less, it will feel less sharp. If you hold it too shallow, you're not even sharpening. Yeah? So it needs to be as accurate as possible for every stroke, and it doesn't take much passes if you can hold it accurate. But if one of them's like this, some of it's like that, and it's wobbling throughout, it takes longer. So the beauty, of trying to get it really, really accurate makes all the difference. Right?
So why not use just a guide underneath the knife for each stroke?
Well, I mean, in theory, yes, you could do it like this, and you could do this. The motion is from here to here. I mean, the reason you wouldn't use a guide is because once you've actually got a hang of the muscle memory, you don't need to use a guide, and it's significantly quicker to not use a guide, right? I mean, yes, you can buy all sorts of gadgets to help you like strap the knife in and hold it at a perfect angle, or you can just learn to do it properly. Put a little bit of groundwork in and then just do it properly, right? I mean, obviously, if you can't get on with it, yes, buy a gadget, you know. But it's not that difficult to learn, but it just takes a little bit of time and patience while you're starting, because as I mentioned, it's muscle memory, but the consistency of the angle is everything. All right. If you take nothing away from, if you remember nothing about this process, just remember it's 20 degrees, and the consistency of that angle is everything. Okay. So you've got your knife, come out the kitchen, and it is blunt. It's not as sharp as it once was. You can feel it in how you're cutting the food. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean it's damaged. If it is damaged, it's a different process. You have to undo the damage. You've got to get past the damage. Obviously, you've got machines. We can do it very quickly. You can do it on a stone. It's very slow. All right. So have a little look. Is it damaged? If it's damaged, you're going to have to get past that damage first. If it's not, and it just needs a sharpen, which is kind of what we're going through at the moment, then what we're going to do is we're going to do this stroke from here, the heel of the knife in the centre of the stone, 20 degrees, the tip of the stone to here. So we're aiming from the heel here to the tip here. And what you might have noticed is, even though I didn't change the angle, can you see the water on the stone? Can you see I have to lift my hand? Let me do it. You see it. Can you see how the water's moving? I have to lift my hand to get that to get the tip of the knife to come into contact. If I don't, all I'm doing is I'm keeping the angle, but I'm just lifting my hand, not changing the angle. Yeah. If you don't, then what will happen is you'll do this. You won't be sharpening this, and you'll be dragging it off the edge of the stone. So you'll round the corner of your stones off, and you won't actually be sharpening the tip of the knife. Right? So, how many times do I need to do this? The answer is the amount of times that it takes to form a burr on the opposite side of the blade. Alright? And the reason is because the burr will only form once you've got past damage. Okay? So it won't form if there's chips and dinks, even if they're very, very small and you can't see them. Now, if you hold the angle nice and consistently, and I'm putting a little bit of pressure down as I'm doing this, and you can see that this is becoming dirty, and this is the metal particles actually coming off of this, right? So now what I'm doing is I'm trying to feel for a burr. Now, this is not made any easier by the fact that it's cold. It's much harder to feel the burr when it's cold. And when you're new to it, it's hard to feel a burr, right? So if I'm doing it this way, the burr will be forming on this side, so I'm feeling it this way. And it's easier to feel if you put quite a bit of force behind the stroke. It's not going to cut you if you're pushing this way. And what you're feeling for is like a catchy edge. So this is quite a strong burr.
Yeah, I can feel.
So I did maybe, what, 10?
Yeah.
Not many.
Yeah.
It's a sharp. It was done on the machine, so it wasn't particularly blunt to start with. But you know, quite often, unless you've got a really blunt knife, carbon steel, you might expect 20 strokes, maybe 30 strokes.
It's quite mild. It's quite subtle though, yeah.
Well, actually, that's quite a big burr. If you compare it to the other side of the blade, where there definitely won't be a burr.
Yeah, yeah.
Compare them.
Oh, actually, yeah. Okay,
so
fine.
if at any point you're like, I'm not sure if I can feel a burr, compare it to the other side. There will not be a burr on this side.
Yeah, if I go across the top, I can feel it more than going up, like across like that. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you can compare it.
Yeah,
now,
definitely.
not only are you just so you don't just go, yeah, there's a burr, move on. No, you need to make sure that you can feel a burr
Everywhere.
at every stage, because there's a burr down here, but there might not be a burr up here. And if there's no burr up here, but there's a big burr down here, then if you want to, you can basically just work on just that little area. You don't necessarily need to do the whole knife unless you find that easier. Okay, until you can feel a burr the whole way along. So that was about 10 strokes, we'll say, to get that burr. Now what I'm going to do is, there's lots of different ways to sharpen, but this is just the way that I find comes very quick with a bit of practice. Flip it over in my hand, and I put my thumb here. So it went from here to here, and I'm going back. This makes it really quick. If you know, when you get good at this, it means you can do it really, really quickly. Yeah, because you're pretty much just going from here to here.
Yep.
Yeah. So I've done this 10 times, and we go here. If the stone starts to dry out, give it a little bit of water. Now this is a little bit more tricky this side, because you have to feel it more than see it, right? So you can kind of gauge it again. So this is what it feels like for me to hold it this way round at 20 degrees. Yeah, this is what it feels like. And it's a little bit more tricky because you're going to have to start with the tip, and you really don't want to gouge the tip in. And to start with, you'll hear that burr. 2, 3. Okay, so I'm going to do 10 strokes. I'm assuming that's roughly what I might have done the previous time. Can I feel that burr transferred? So, I feel.
Oh yeah, now it's one there. A bit here.
Yeah. So now we flipped it over to the other side. So this is a good thing. Basically what this is telling us, the burr will not form if there's still damage on the micro bevel.
But not everywhere. I feel like here.
So there might be places,
Here
there might be some areas where the burr is either bigger, or maybe there's some areas where the burr is not quite there yet, just a little bit of damage, something like that.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So if you're unsure, which we are, we're going to just do a few more strokes
On the other side.
just until we're sure, right? So obviously now I'm going from the tip of the knife here, and I'm aiming to get the heel of it here. And I tend to find it's a bit easier if you tilt it this way. It gives your fingers a little bit more clearance before they start to touch the stone. Okay, so it's about 13 strokes or something like that. So try and feel with my cold fingers, yeah. So I'm happy there's a burr the whole way along there. So now we've basically gone from a burr on one side to a burr on the other side, right? And now what we need to do is just true it up. And the best way to do this, and to actually be sharpening it at the same time, is to come back to this side and do 10. Okay, 10. And also you'll notice, I'm going to do this once, but you'll hear it as well as see it. that off the end. Not good for your knife, not good for the stone. Try and avoid doing that. If you're starting to hear that, adjust your technique.
Yep.
Okay. So 10, 9. Okay, this way, back round. 8.
Oh, so you're counting now?
Yeah. If you imagine each time I'm doing this, we'll see when I take. Each time I'm doing this, the burr is going back, but I'm doing it fewer times, so it's kind of going. Eventually, it will come to this. So 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Alright, so now that burr is no longer a burr, it's a true edge. Okay. So there's a thing that you'll see people do and like cut paper, and it's like a bit of a gimmicky thing quite a lot of the time, but you can actually use a piece of paper to check to make sure there's no little blunt spots. Or little spots that just need like a little bit more attention. So let me get a piece of paper.
I'm recording this because when I did this like little evening course of it, I completely forgot about 2 weeks later. And like you said, actually, different people have slightly different techniques as well around it.
Loads. I mean, there's as many different techniques as there is different people. I think. I mean, I'm not even sure. I can't even really remember anymore if this. I think this has probably evolved my own technique from a load of like snatched bits from other people's techniques, you know. So there is a technique to this as well. The paper needs to be dry, the edge needs to be dry, otherwise this doesn't work particularly well. But basically you're holding it close to your fingertips because you want the resistance on the paper, and you want to pull it through the paper at about a 45-degree angle. Now if it's nice and consistent, it's basically showing you that the edge is nice and consistent. Okay? So you can basically do it from like here. It might sometimes as well, it's quite difficult to get it started. It's not necessarily a reflection on the fact that it's not sharp here, it's just sometimes quite difficult to get it started. So have a little go at that. So this is just with 800, right?
Yep.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the 6,000.
Yep.
That's a bit sharp. You want to try?
Oh, I've done it before, yeah.
You always do that like but really fast, no? Like that's the cheating way.
Yeah, well I mean also you've got to bear in mind this has only been sharpened with an 800 stone, so for it to be, you know, this is a very nice quality steel, and I can tell that just by the fact that it's cutting that well after 800 stone. Because this you won't expect the same. It's thicker edge, it's not as refined, and this is quite a nice piece of steel, right? Quite an expensive piece of steel. Okay, so the first part of the process on the most coarse stone was feeling for this burr, but that's just to assess we're getting past the damage. We know we've got past the damage now, and we're in the sharpening process, so I don't need to go through that again. I just need to start at 10, get over 9, 8, all back to 1. Okay? Just to keep the sharpening process going. You'll hear that it's a different type of stone.
It's a noisy one.
So you can see the kind of advantage of keeping it in the one hand, right? It's so quick to check it over. I mean, the alternative would be that you go from here to here, but it's very slow. Okay. When I get to one, I'm just going to do a couple on one. I tend to find it just makes it look nicer. Okay, so you can try it again on the paper. Also, you see this torn edge. This will be much harder to start than on a normal edge. So you should, at this stage, be able to feel the difference. You can hear, you can sense the difference.
Yeah.
You can sense the difference.
Oh yeah.
Yeah? So that's 6,000. So, in theory, this is now sharpened, right? But there tends to be like the really, really refined part of the sharpening process is what is referred to as honing, right? So, if you want to hone a knife, I mean, you don't need to hone a kitchen knife necessarily, but professional knife sharpeners will hone the knife as well. And this is the equivalent of, we're going to do this on level, but this is the equivalent of taking up to about 30,000. I mean, at that point, literally, you will be able to shave with this blade.
Yeah, so I've got a leather block with some like stropping, what is it, crystallized diamond powder or whatever you put on it, and so that's that final step.
Yeah, well, it depends on what it is. I mean, quite often you'll use this stuff called jeweler's rouge.
Right.
So this is a polishing compound. So you basically get a piece of leather, or you can use denim. You know, honing is also, you know, these steels, these are honing steels. They're doing the same. So they're not really sharpening. They're not really removing material. They're just truing up the edge, polishing the edge, really refined stages of sharpening. I tend to find I quite just like using leather. I kind of find that I get quite a good outcome with leather, and it's much easier, because you don't have to learn a whole other technique. Essentially, if we're kind of just making this as simple as possible from a learning perspective, you can just put that on there and just do the same thing. Right? You don't need to like kind of learn anything new. If you want, you can add a bit of this jeweler's rouge. This white one is the one that you want. This is the equivalent of about 30,000. Now what you're going to find is that you possibly might be pushing the leather around. So obviously if we do, we might need to hold it and do it one-handed. But the one-handed is also a testament to the fact that you are really doing all of the controlling of the angle with this hand at least. This is really just helping you guide and apply a little bit of pressure. Yeah. So we'll start this way. We'll see if we pull it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see it's moving around. Actually, when I tend to do it, I actually tend to do it like this, because I'm using a bit more of the leather. I've got a little bit more control, and I'm using a bigger area, so it's actually quicker.
Seems like it's doing nothing, to be honest.
Wow, you wait.
Yeah.
You wait. I mean, considering like what is this? How long has this taken to do the extra stropping bit? Like, obviously, I'm comfortable with doing it. My speed is quicker than yours should be, because you will need to really be focusing on the your angles. But it doesn't need to take very long to sharpen a knife, you know. And that makes a huge difference. You know, I can basically kind of push it through the paper.
Yeah. You can see how sharp it is from the mirror. It's very, very, very polished.
Oh yeah,
that's crazy, right?
It's quite satisfying. Cool. I'm gonna start doing this at home. My girlfriend's gonna kill me.
But obviously, you you need to let your girlfriend know this knife has been sharpened that much, because you could chop the tips of your fingers off and not even realise because it's that sharp.
Yeah, wow.
So
I always see like people doing that, like
Yeah.
drawing it.
you want to do it?
Yeah. Let's see.
You don't mind losing some hair?
Yeah. Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah. 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 Oh, no. Oh wow.
Yeah, it's your hair.
Yeah.